Projection is the way in which our historic system moves into the world. If I stop and think about every moment being wholly new, I might be frozen. I might be unable to handle it. It's foreign, it's strange. So projection means that my history gets activated in a positive way and says, all right, what do we know about this kind of situation and how do you cope with that? If you land at an airport in a foreign country, the first thing you do is you start looking for familiar points of reference, and with that you find the bathroom or customs or whatever. And if you don't see the familiar signs or the familiar language, your anxiety and stress goes up, you see. Now, projection is how we get out of bed in the morning, the capacity to see ourselves acting in the world and functioning in it. On the other hand, projection means that same history that is activated within us also can come out and impose upon the world out there expectations, historic data, old strategies that we don't know are at work as well. Now, all relationships begin with projection because by definition the other is other. The otherness of the other is always foreign, always strange, always unknown. That's why a couple could be married for 50 years and never really know the other, because we are other. We're separate worlds. And yet we are attracted to certain people, we are afraid of certain people, we have feeling states about certain people who are total strangers. And projection is something that's been triggered in me, activated in me, that leaves me and enters the world and falls upon you. And so I will begin to relate to you in terms of what is in my own unconscious or what my history tells me about you. Even though that's falsifying you, I don't know that because it's unconscious. We don't think, oh, I'm going to have a projection now. It happens. It's triggered. It's there. I begin to relate to you in that way. So the first stage of projection is always, it happens, I begin responding to the other and trying to make the other known in some way. That's how projection works. What do I think I know about you, and what do I believe about you, and so forth. Are you friend or foe? And that's where all my history gets projected onto you. The second stage is that you are, after all, an other. And sooner or later, you will not wholly conform to the expectations of my projection. And I'll feel some distortion or some cognitive dissonance, some disturbance in the field of energy here. And I'll think, so what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with you? That often evokes the third stage, which is the power complex. It's sort of like, how do I get you to move back in line with my expectations? And among couples and romances and so forth, there's always that troubling moment when people say, well, you're not quite the person I thought you were, and how do I get you to be that person again? And couples fall into quarrels or passive-aggressive behavior or whatever. And it's the effort of the psyche to restore the familiar rather than really deal with the unknown. And many projections ultimately just dissolve because the reality of the other, being other, wears through the projection. And you might emerge as a more interesting person, a more worthy person, more worthy of my attention than I ever expected. Or the reverse, I might find, the original charge between us just dissipated. And that happens when people fall out of love, for example. And usually people respond to the erosion of the projection or collapse of it as often in a blaming way, like you let me down, or somehow you betrayed my expectations. And often that's where it ends. And therefore that same projection will probably be re-triggered rather quickly in another direction, another person. The fifth stage, if it occurs, is where a person says, what was that about? That energy that I gave to you has come back to me. What does it tell me about me? What does it imply for me to consider? What do I have to look at within myself? And the collapse of projections is normally felt as a disturbing, confusing, and often disappointing phenomenon. It's always an invitation to an enlargement of consciousness, because I'm obliged to say, okay, there's something else at work within me, autonomously, not by choice, but autonomously has happened here. And if I can look at what that's about, I have a chance of expanding that awareness of what is really going on inside of me. my agendas, my expectations, my unmet parts of myself. And with that is the gift of greater awareness and greater self-knowledge, and possibly the freeing of you or freeing of the other to be what they are, the other. Ironically, it's when we have our projections collapse, when we feel those disappointments, there's always an invitation to actually see and value the other as they are, rather than out of our expectations. So projection is something both positive and negative as it plays out. It helps us enter the world and engage it, and often build upon our past experience, but it also tends to bias and prejudice our relationship to that new moment.